that's funny. Yeah, I saw him as a future head coach. Yeah, we worked together in Houston. Not only did we work together and share the same office, in that office it was myself, Matt LaFleur, and Robert Saleh, all in one office on Gary Kubiak's staff. So you kind of, see, who wants to grind, who wants to work, who is has the X's and O's down, who has great personality. I've been very fortunate to be around a number of guys that become head coaches. D'Amico Ryans is another one. I shared office with Sean McVay. So I've been fortunate. I know what a good coach looked like because I've been around all of them. So I can tell you for a fact, we got a damn good head coach here. A damn good head coach. I'm just telling you. I know what they look like. I've been around them. So, and it worked for Mike Shanahan, John Fox, Gary Kubiak, all Super Bowl winning or went to Super Bowl head coaches. So I knew from afar when I watched some of his press conferences or some of that stuff, I was like, the guy's pretty sharp. But then when you work with him and you can see the attention to detail and how he meticulously looks at everything, no matter what it is, dives deep into things, all right, and has an eye. Real head coaches have an eye for things when they happen, all right, and they're able to anticipate stuff. And like, I'm just telling you, like I'm just telling you, and I ain't sit up here and talk about it forever. But you guys just watch. We got a good head coach. I've been around a lot of them. All right, damn good, special.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another Tuesday edition of the Chicago Football Show. I'm Scott Bair alongside Carmen Vitali, and you just heard from Bears special teams coordinator Richard Hightower extolling Ben Johnson's virtues. And I liked it at the end there. He said, look, I'm not trying to kiss my boss's butt here, but I think this guy is really special. And I think that that's a good Richard Hightower-y way to end it. Kind of what did you make of Richard Hightower's comments, especially because he's worked with so many quality head coaches as he cut his teeth and came up to start working for the Bears?
Yeah, I mean, Richard Hightower is a veteran coach at this point in the league, and he's seen a lot. So to see him, at least at this stage, think that the Bears are on the right track and that Ben Johnson is on the right track as he makes that transition into being a head coach from a coordinator, which isn't an easy one, that has to be encouraging. I mean, obviously you don't want the alternative at this point. So it's still untested. It's still unproven. We don't have to make any sweeping conclusions about how this season's going to go, how Ben Johnson's tenure in Chicago is going to go. But I mean, this is just kind of keeping with the theme that everything that Ben Johnson has been doing up until this point on paper is good, and it's encouraging. And I think that it's not an accident when you look at all of the coaches that Ben Johnson has surrounded himself with, Richard Hightower included. Like I said, he's a veteran coach. He's been around in this league. He's coached special teams for a very long time. And then bringing in Dennis Allen, that head coach, that first-time head coach, offensive head coach pairing with a seasoned vet at defensive coordinator and maybe former head coach. I feel like that is a pairing that works around the league. You don't have to go far to even see that it does when you look at places like Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell taking his first head coaching job and then bringing in Brian Flores a year later. I mean, that's worked very, very well for the Vikings, I'd say. So that kind of pairing and the fact that Ben Johnson was so intentional with surrounding himself with veterans and experience on his staff, I mean, that's all you want at this stage as they're kind of gaining this momentum and setting a foundation for what his tenure is going to look like in Chicago.
Yeah, and I think he didn't hire his friends, which we've talked about before, and it was a smart thing. And Dennis Allen said something in his last press conference, if I can say that word right, that really struck me. He told Ben last week in the morning, Ben dropped by Dennis Allen's office, and Dennis said, he started talking about head coaching, and he said, if you can understand and accept that 5 things will come across your desk that you didn't plan for, then that really frees you up because now you're kind of ready for everything, because these coaches, they get here at 4:30, 5 a.m. and every second is accounted for and they leave feeling like they didn't do enough. So when you get variables thrown in, it can definitely mess you up and it can mix things up. And Ben Johnson's ability to pivot from those and eliminate those things quickly, those things are important. But to your earlier point, there's a key phrase on paper, right? Because the most important thing is winning football games. He hasn't even had an opportunity to do that yet, and he hasn't had an opportunity to really see if he can get this immensely talented quarterback pointed in the right direction, working within the rhythm of his offense. And Carmen, that's something that fans, the 23,000 who were at Soldier Field on Sunday, they saw 3 delay of game penalties. You were out at practice earlier when Caleb Williams had to rehuddle the first team offense once, maybe twice, and then got kicked off the field. These are the little procedural things that, look, I like their demand for accountability. That's good because they have to get that right. You have to crawl before you can walk, right? And those things have to be right. But is it at all alarming that it's still happening and it's officially August? Because we kept saying it's not even August yet. Well, now it is.
Right. No, it is. And that's the key part here, and the fact that these are repeat mistakes. So I don't want to say that I'm at like, I'm super concerned quite yet, because again, it is training camp and these things take time. There was a lot of overhaul when you talk about the new systems that both Dennis Allen and Ben Johnson are bringing in. Ben Johnson has readily told us that he is not going easy on these guys in training camp. He's throwing a lot at them offensively and trying to make them kind of wade through the mud and figure it all out for themselves, because adversity is a certainty in the league, and that's what he's trying to do. So I expected it to look bumpy in the beginning. I expected it to still look bumpy. I expect it to still look bumpy even when the season gets started, but there has to be a level of concern when you're talking so much about not making the same mistake twice, and then the same mistake is getting made 2, 3, 4 times, especially when there were more distractions added in at Soldier Field. You're in a stadium, there are some fans, but that can't be enough to completely throw you off your game. And I think that that's kind of where the concern comes in, is like, these are procedural penalties, these are pre-snap penalties. I don't think there's anything that drives a coach more crazy than pre-snap penalties, because you have the utmost control as a player over those. You are in charge of when you go. You are in charge of, paying attention to the ball and being on your marks and lining up correctly. Those are things that you are in control over. You're not necessarily in control over if you're a little handsy and the ref is calling that day and this, that, the other. I think those aggressive penalties are something that coaches will take time and time again with no problem. But when you're talking about procedural penalties and delay of games and false starts, even, I know we can see that, but like stuff like that pre-snap is very disheartening for coaches. So I expect them to clamp down even more. Hopefully the team responds to that. So I have a little bit of concern at this point. I'm not, again, no sweeping conclusions, because this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. How many more cliches can I get in there? But yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to form a Carmen Vitali quote book. And we all know that progress is not linear is in there. That might be the title of the book. But I'm also going with adversity is a certainty. That is, truer words were never spoken, especially for a first-time head coach in the NFL. One thing that is troubling to me about the pre-snap stuff and the fact that it's the first unit offense. Tyson Bagent and Case Keenum aren't having these problems, right? They're not going through the same experience. And that, I'll say, it raises one eyebrow, which I think that I can do sometimes. It raises one eyebrow. And that's a little kind of concerning. And I think that as we look at this team hitting its potential, which we're going to talk to a lot over the course of what is an absolutely jam-packed Chicago football show. We don't have one guest. We have 2. Mike Golic Jr. joins us. Golic and Golic airs on Marquee Sports Network. Please check that out. He's coming up very soon. And then later in the show, we have Tom Waddle, who, of course, you know from Bair Essentials on the Marquee Sports Network. A lot of talk about Caleb Williams, about Ben Johnson, about offensive line. So get excited about all of that. But, Carm, we are leading towards a Friday joint practice against the Miami Dolphins, which show announcement, we're having a special Chicago football show that day. Get amped for that and get ready for that. That's why you should rate, review, and subscribe. But we're getting close to that Dolphins practice. What do you expect from that? What do you want to see from that when you're up here with me at Hallis Hall?
I mean, Ben Johnson has even said that that's a benchmark for this team. That's a benchmark for him, for his staff, for the players. And the mistakes that they make against the Dolphins better not be the same ones that they made at Family Fest, because that's going to be very disheartening, I have to imagine, for Ben Johnson and his staff, because the execution just won't be improving the way that they want it to. And I think that going against a different team that's not your own teammates that haven't seen exactly what you're going to do, or maybe overlapped in some meetings and all of that kind of stuff, that is going to be key to figuring out just how far along these guys are. So I'm hoping it doesn't look sloppy. I'm looking for, again, some of those procedural things. And are the guys kind of communicating on the same page? Are they rallying? What's happening when they're getting thrown something in 11 on 11 from the Dolphins defense that they haven't seen before on the field yet because it's been their own team? Those are the kind of things that I'm very interested to see. And I just don't want the Bears to lose their head. I don't want the players to lose their head. I want it. And I always say I don't want to see fights. I don't want to see bad fights. Because I do think a little bit of contact, because you're in pads and you're allowed. I mean, it's hot and this, that, the other. I've seen my share of training camp fights, and if they're used in a constructive way, and what I mean by that is, it gets your side of the ball going because you're going to bat for your guy, or if it's an offensive lineman protecting Caleb because he got hit when he wasn't supposed to, stuff like that. I'd love to see that, and I want to see that because that shows that these guys are gelling as a team, even if it's not translating quite yet on the field. Are they together? Are they, do they enjoy each other? Are they real teammates? Is there a culture being built here that we've heard Ben Johnson talk so much about? That's what I'm very interested to see. So like one real thing, and then one, like, I guess I do want to see some fights, but not bad fights. So don't quote me on saying like I want all the fights. I mean, they're fun, but I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Yeah, I was covering a joint practice when I was covering the Raiders, and I saw a defensive lineman, Mario Edwards, take a swing and hit somebody with his bare fist into the helmet. Guess what happened to his hand?
Oh, it probably broke it.
It probably broke. So no Bears players, advice from Scott and Carmen, don't do that. Don't swing and punch someone in the helmet. Words to live by. And we're going to hear more words to live by from a former Notre Dame offensive lineman, Mike Golic Jr. He may have been in a training camp fight or two. I don't think we asked him that, but we probably should have. But we're going to take a quick break. We have a special guest with us here on the Chicago Football Show. It is Mike Golic Jr., half of Golic and Golic, the other half, same name, different.
More hair, you can say. Yeah. I'll say it so you don't have to.
True. Which actually you can find airing on Marquee Sports Network. He's also involved with the Bleacher Report Training Camp Live.
BR NFL Training Camp Live is the very original name we have given to this program that brings me to Chicago today, which is awesome, and I'm very thankful for that.
Awesome. Well, hey, you can check out Mike Golic Jr. in a number of different places, but he's right here in Hallis Hall right now. So let's get to the Bears conversation. I guess, first of all, your overall impressions of Ben Johnson kind of taking over. Let's just start general and broad with the head coach.
Yeah, the big buzzword seems to have been competition, right, which is what everyone wants brought into their camp when you've got a new regime coming in. It's that extra injection of life. But I think what stuck out so far through the early reports of camp that I've seen and I'm excited to kind of see out here is the attention to detail that's really being stressed, the amount of care and everything. I played college football, not in the NFL, but I've been coached by people where you're just trying to get through drills versus going through each with a purpose and an intent where that matches up to what you're going to do in the field later on. And it sounds like with Ben Johnson and this entire staff, that's really been the focus for a Bears team that we heard plenty of last year. Guys saying, hey, we want to be coached harder. Caleb Williams in the headline about watching film by himself. And so I think all of those things matter for players who on that side want to see that this staff is as invested in me as I am in this process.
Well, and listen, it's not new. The offseason this year gave Bears fans a lot of optimism, but that's been the case for the year before and the year before that. So from a national perspective, as someone who covers the entire league and maybe has a little bit more of an objective lens when he's looking at the Chicago Bears, do you think that this time is different in so many, in the minds of so many Bears fans, this time is going to be different? Do you think that's the case?
I do, just because and this is, my own preconceived notions and biases coming in, right? I really like Caleb Williams coming out of college. He was the number one quarterback there versus Justin Fields, where maybe there's a little bit more holes you could poke in his game coming out of Ohio State back in the day. I really like Ben Johnson as someone who not only is that archetype of the offensive wonderkind that comes in, but someone that stayed a little longer. Like, he stayed in the oven there in Detroit for a little bit because he felt like he wasn't yet ready to go. And in an environment like that, where it seems so far too, the early returns kind of give us a little window into absorbing some of that Dan Campbell, where it's not just, this guy is great at drawing up plays, great at calling an offense, but as soon as we heard him pop on the microphone, I said, first off, didn't ever remember hearing Ben Johnson's voice in Detroit. And then second off, the bravado he came with all of a sudden felt like, okay, this guy took some things from that experience around one of the better leaders that we all acknowledge in the NFL in Dan Campbell. And so that combination to me is encouraging. And then you look out at the history of quarterbacks who, unfortunately, like Caleb, have come into a situation where you're the top overall pick, where a coaching staff looks like they could be on the way out. They make that decision after your rookie year, and now you're dealing with your second, possibly third voice in your ear. But then you've seen the right coach can come in and change all that in a hurry before too many of the bad habits and things like that start to get internalized by a young player. So I think with all that combination and some of the changes they made this offseason on the roster, they definitely have an opportunity to right the ship.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that they have weapons on offense, and then with the first two draft picks, they go get Colston Loveland and Luther Burden. Now you look at this core, and DJ Moore is under contract through 28, and then you have Rome Odunze, another top 10 pick. What do you make of the offensive skill players that are going to be under contract with Caleb Williams throughout the life of his rookie deal?
Yeah, I thought it was really strong public vote that we know what the assignment is this year, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
the assignment a little bit.
Yeah, to use the parlance of our times. Dennis Allen, obviously, like, the defense is not to be completely forgotten in this process, and there's plenty to talk about there. But when you come in and your team just took the top quarterback in the draft the year before, the assignment is make sure you get that right. It's a franchise level investment that everyone understands carries a little bit more weight than almost everything else. And so you did overhaul the interior of the offensive line, and you do want to continue to add weapons in the cupboard in that passing game to already complement what you've got. Like, watching what DJ Moore can do for you with the ball in his hands, yards after the catch, is incredible. What you started to see in terms of the timing and the development of that relationship with Caleb and Rome Odunze towards the end of the season last year, something that you can build on. And so it stocks the cupboard again with weapons. We know Ben from that offense in Detroit loves a deep tight end room and has it out here. Shout out to my Notre Dame guys in the depth chart there. But also, putting them in a position where none of those guys are going to have to come in right away and shoulder the majority of the load. So it allows it to bring them along, I think, at the right speed to make sure you're maximizing their chances for success and maximizing the variety of weapons you give for your young quarterback.
Well, and maximizing the potency and maybe the variance of this offense is going to hinge also on the offensive line, which is a position you're very, very familiar with. For those that don't know, Mike played offensive line at Notre Dame. But this is a place where the Bears did a lot of work in this offseason. They traded for Joe Thuney, 4-time Super Bowl champion. They got Jonah Jackson, who Ben Johnson was familiar with from his time in Detroit. And then you get, I think, the most crucial piece of all of this, which was Drew Dahlman at center. What can that relationship bring to Caleb? How can that make this easier for Caleb to develop within this system? And then what can that do for the offense in general? Because it's not just the protection of Caleb, who took 68 sacks last year. It's also getting the run game, having a balanced offense. That all hinges on those big men up front.
Yeah, I thought that group and the message that sent was huge this offseason. Ben Johnson came out, talked about the importance of it, and then they delivered immediately, him and Ryan Poles. And what that does, like, having an interior, we know for quarterbacks, the worst place, the place they all want pressure, even one like Caleb who can do the Houdini stuff, get out of the pocket, is athletic enough to do it. No one wants that quick pressure up the middle. So Joe Thuney brings championship pedigree. Jonah, who you mentioned, and I think you see this around the NFL in more and more places. Like, I always thought of Dan Quinn last year in Washington with Tyler Biadasz, where you bring someone that's familiar with what you do at an important vocal leadership position, important position for communicating with your young players. player, like the interior of the O-line. So Drew Dahlman, now a veteran in this league, but Jonah knows this offense. He knows what they do. And so to have him there, who I thought played better than he got credit for when he was on the field last year in Los Angeles, that was sort of a weird situation there with the amount of injuries and turnover on that Rams O-line last year. But so having that group together who understands how to play football at a high level and can be a sounding board and extra information for your young quarterback who's also learning a new offense and one that asks a decent amount from the neck up from the quarterback, I think all that's invaluable there. And what it gives you the opportunity to do, and I think the biggest difference when I watched the Bears offense from last year and the Lions offense from last year is I think the amount of protection schemes that you can employ to present difficult looks for a defensive front. You saw how much the Lions were able to move the pocket, work off the under center play action stuff that they did a lot more of than Chicago. All of that, when you're just, it's kind of the same idea as motion in different formations, is I want to present enough to the defense to where they've got to think. Defensive players don't want to think. They want to go forward and they want to destroy. And so when you can stop and do that the way that Detroit was able to, I think you not only help your quarterback out, but you help your offensive line out being able to go and marry so much of that together conceptually. And so when you've got veteran players across the board like that, I think it gives you a really good opportunity to execute that.
Let's definitely stay along the offensive line here and focus on the left tackle.
Sure.
Braxton Jones, in my opinion, and I'm not an offensive line expert, I thought he was a serviceable left tackle in pass protection. Ben Johnson has kind of made this an open competition. They draft Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College in the second round. Karan Amagaji is still around from the third round from Yale. What do you make of that situation, considering that Braxton Jones is coming off of the injury, but he's got all the experience? Like, this is a fifth-round guy that just took hold of a starting spot and never let it go.
Yeah, I thought, to your point, like, did a really admirable job last year, just a little, light in the hindquarters at times and maybe gave up a little bit too much in way of push into the pocket, but is a guy that overall did a lot of good things. Ozzie Trapillo I liked a lot coming out of Boston College, maybe not the most dynamic athlete in terms of Ben, plays really well within himself, really strong technician, all the stuff that you expect, from BC offensive linemen, which I say begrudgingly as a member of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. It's a really impressive lineage there, and so I think any of those guys, to me, talent-wise, look like they're in a place where, again, factoring in the room that you've got with you and the fact that, if you're talking about Joe Thuney playing left guard right there, that to me is always huge. Who you're in the room with and who you're playing next to for someone that might be, if it's Braxton, then obviously he's got starting experience and we just work on that relationship. But if it is Ozzie and he gets in there as a young player, to have all of that experience and the eyes that you can see through. I went to camp with the New Orleans Saints back in the day when Jari Evans and Zach Streif were on the same right side of that line, and watching the way they communicated through things was incredible for a young player. So much of it they did without having to speak at that point. They'd played together for 9 years. They understood that, but they were always working in tandem. And so that's how you got to think of these little pods on the offensive line, the guys next to each other. And I think that experience right at that left guard spot is really going to help whoever winds up at left tackle.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm so excited to have had you on for this, just because of the fact that so much of the conversation about this offense in general has to do with the offensive line. It has to do with Ben Johnson. When do you think we can expect to see the full breadth of Ben Johnson's offense? Because I've been preaching patience.
Yes.
But that's not something that people necessarily want to hear. So the more people I can get to say this, the better. So what do you think are the expectations immediately, especially given the Bears have that week 5 bye? So they kind of have the starting point of the first 4 games to really kind of, evaluate where they're at.
Well, yeah, and I think it's worth reminding everyone, post-2011 CBA in the NFL, things changed in terms of the amount of time you're on the field in training camp. We've obviously also whittled away the amount of preseason games that we play. All that means is the first quarter of the NFL season is becoming an extended preseason, especially along the offensive lines. Like, while we've said glowing things about all these guys, this is a unit where almost none of those guys have worked together before.
Exactly.
That communication and continuity takes a lot of time to build up. And so I'd say if the first quarter of the season looks a little bit out of sorts in that regard, don't panic. Like, that bye in week 5, huge, where now you get through that. You've got that time and opportunity to get, catch your breath, self-scout a little bit, and then work off what you've seen there and problem solve, to me is invaluable. But I always now in the NFL look at that quarter mark at, like, all right, 4 games into the season, we can try and look for certain things, but understand development for me now really starts there just in terms of the preseason timeline for these guys.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating watch. We don't know if the season will go above 500, way below. They're in a very difficult division, but they will not be boring. I guarantee you that. They will not be boring, and neither was this conversation. So Mike Golic Jr., again, you can catch him on Golic and Golic on Marquee Sports Network. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Chicago Football Show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Chicago Football Show, and thank you so much to Mike Golic Jr. for stopping by and joining us last week. Really good interview, and as always, watch Golic and Golic on the Marquee Sports Network. So just never change the channel. I feel like that's the way to go. Carmen, quick update. Since we talked to Mike Golic Jr., there's been some developments in that left tackle kind of situation. Karan Amagaji has been banged up over the course of the last couple of days. He has a leg injury. Not really sure how long he's going to be out. That's still to be determined, which has left more snaps for Ozzie Trapillo and Braxton Jones. We're seeing the second-round rookie from Boston College take a lot of first-team reps. Now, Declan Doyle, the offensive coordinator, was very specific. We are still rotating guys. We have not made any decisions as of yet. I believe that to be the case because of the joint practices and the preseason games that we still have left ahead of us. But how do you kind of see that situation shaking out now that we're 10, 11, 12 practices into this camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the limited reps can also be, for Braxton Jones, can also be attributed to the fact that he himself is coming off injury. And we've seen the Bears so far this camp be very, very conservative with him. And that's just made it so that, yeah, a guy like Ozzie Trapillo is getting every chance in the world, though, to make his mark and to make his case for being the starting left tackle. And listen, a second round lineman there are plenty of second round starters in the league. I mean, that's a place that a lot of teams have gotten their starters from, and it's not always first round, although that is usually, the big time guys are the guys that come out of the first round. But that's not to say that you can't do it from a second round perspective. And getting these chances, getting these reps is clearly really helping Ozzie Trapillo. He comes from Boston College. That is a pro-style offense under Bill O'Brien. He's very used to kind of that style of play. Obviously, the speed of the game gets faster and things are still different in the NFL game, but making that transition isn't as hard when you come from a system like Ozzie did at Boston College. So I think that really gives him a leg up in a lot of ways. Also, this staff drafted him. I think that is something that can't be overlooked either. And Ben Johnson has glowed about offensive linemen in particular that come from Boston College. And you can look around the league, guys like Chris Lindstrom, that have come out of Boston College and made their marks right away. And so that's something that Ozzie Trapillo is aiming to do. And I'm not entirely sure he's not going to do it, especially being given all of these reps, whether it be because his competition is injured or what. Having these chances is invaluable in front of this coaching staff.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to hear Braxton Jones speak just a couple of days ago. For one, the veteran was so honest about the process of coming back from a major injury that required a significant surgery. And he was really candid about having to find patience and having to kind of search his soul for motivation, because there were times he didn't want to get out of bed in the morning, but you have to do those things to get back to this point. But one thing that he did say about the competition-ness of it all, especially going into a contract year for him, and left tackles make pretty good money. This is a big competition for him, both in the short term and with his long-term financial future. I mean, he's still going to make a lot of money, but it's like he could make serious money if he goes out and has a really good year. Is he said, the most important thing for me in this competition is being able to get my ankle right. That makes a lot of sense to me, because if he goes out and he continues to push it just to get on the field more, but he's not at his best, that he's not serving himself well, or if he has a setback, he's not showing as well as he could. And to your point, Carm, is that this coaching staff is real conservative with injuries. They understand them, right? And they understand what those setbacks are. So it's just about getting him right really in time before the Bears have to make a big decision. And it's not like backup quarterback or even number 2 cornerback. They can't wait till September 1st to make this choice. They need time for whoever the left tackle is to work with Joe Thuney, all pro that he is, future Hall of Famer, work with those guys, gain some cohesion. That is important. And it could be Ozzie. which could be an instant impact type of rookie, right? Now, there's another instant impact type of rookie floating around. Yes, Colston Loveland is one. The other one is receiver Luther Burden, and the conversation around him has been like this, right? And
a roller
I
coaster.
will. I'm going to give us a pat on the back here at the Chicago Football Show. We didn't panic when he kept missing time, right? We kept saying, look, super early. He's got time to figure it out. Yeah, he struggled, and we did point out those things early, but really after the first couple practices where we saw some misalignments, he's been good. And Ben Johnson talks about there's a difference between fast. Like I ran track and I'm fast, but I'm not quick, right? Like there's a huge difference. Like I'm not quick. Luther Burden's play speed is so fast, and he looks open a lot. He had a huge day last week where I think he caught five passes, deep, short, stopping on a dime type stuff. This guy's. I feel like we have something here just in terms of the physical skills. Like if we aren't going to kill him when he was just missing time, then we can't heap hyperbolic praise on him just because he's had a good week. But I think he's got some skill.
I do too. And I remember talking to a couple of Ben Johnson's old coworkers just about the draft class this year and what they thought about the draft class and what if it was indicative of who Ben Johnson is and what he was going to do with all of those guys. And the one that stuck out to like in this conversation the most was when we talked about Luther Burden and how Luther Burden could not there's a 1-for-1 comparison here, and I'm not trying to do that. But the role of a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown on the Lions offense who can line up all over the field, has a really wide skill set, has the ability to separate, can stop on a dime, has that quickness, has that twitch, can release, his release is really good. His route running is really good. These are all traits that Luther Burden also has. And the big question mark with Luther Burden was the injury concerns and if he could work his way back, because again, you're working your way back into a completely different game than you're used to playing in college. The college game and the pro game are very, very different for receivers, for everybody, even though it's the same route tree, all that kind of stuff. It's just a different kind of game. And it's a different offense for Luther Burden to learn. So the only question mark was going to be how quickly he could get up to speed. And that's what we've seen so far. We did see a couple of bumps early, lining up wrong, this, that, the other, kind of confused as to where he was supposed to be. I think that comes with, hey, I've taken a lot of mental reps, which he has. We've heard that he's been in all the meetings. He's around the team. He's doing everything else that his receiver teammates are doing, but he just wasn't getting on the field. Once you get on the field, there's going to be some of that adjustment period. But now he seems to have gotten over that pretty quickly and has been building a rapport with Caleb Williams pretty quick also. Like that he's quick in a lot of ways, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, is that he's not only quick twitch and all that other stuff, but he's quick to learn, which is what you need to be because he is so far behind. And I did appreciate how Ben Johnson always said, he is missing valuable time. I can't tell you everything is going to be okay with him. I can't tell you that he's going to come in and assimilate immediately and be part of this offense. I can't tell you any of that. And because it has been up to Luther Burden to be able to do that. So I'm really encouraged off of what I see so far. Again, these are limited reps in practice and they are against your own teammates and they're in an environment you're very familiar with. So I'm going to be very interested to see Luther Burden against the Miami Dolphins defense now that he's going to get to go against his first opponent in practice and go against a different team that also plays in the NFL. I think that's going to be very interesting to see, to match up with those corners and really figure out, how he's going to play the pro game. But so far I'm very encouraged by what I've seen from Luther Burden, and he's picked it up a lot quicker than I was anticipating.
Yeah, and I think that the Bears have an interesting problem because for as much as we've talked about some issues with the first unit offense, there are more pass catchers because I would combine wide receivers and tight ends together. There are more pass catchers that are worthy of places in the pattern than they have spots available. When you look at Cole Kmet's having a good camp, Colston Loveland, of course, Olamide Zaccheaus, friend of the show, who appeared on the Chicago Football Show, another guy who just keeps showing up every day. And we haven't even mentioned DJ and Rome. So I think it's a good problem to have, especially when you have a creative offensive mind like Ben Johnson. He's evaluating each of these skill sets and will try to use them appropriately But everybody's got to be cool with a target share that may not be exactly what they're used to. So I have trust in Ben as an offensive play designer to be able to extract the best from that group. But I do think Luther Burden isn't going to sit around and wait for a veteran like OZ to take every snap from the slot. So I think all those dynamics are going to be interesting. And all those dynamics we actually talked about I spoke to with Tom Waddle from Bear Essentials, a former Bears wide receiver. He has a lot of insight on Luther Burden, Caleb Williams, and this Bears offense, and you can hear from him coming up next. We are joined by Marquee Sports Network analyst, the guy who breaks everything down on Bear Essentials Fridays during the regular season. That's Tom Waddle, former Bears wide receiver, joining us on the Chicago Football Show. And we're going to get into some football.
Let's do this.
Some Bears football. Camp is starting to progress.
Yes.
We have joint practices and our first preseason game on the horizon.
Yeah.
Give me your kind of breakdown of kind of what you've observed from Ben Johnson, first and foremost, what you've heard from him at the podium and what you've seen in your time out here at camp.
Yeah, everything I've heard from Ben, I've really liked. You know, when they decided they were going to move on from Matt Eberflus, even during the middle of last season, my hopes and dreams were wrapped around the concept of signing Ben Johnson as the next head coach here in Chicago. And I was thrilled when that was ultimately who they ended up with. Everything I've heard from Ben, his approach, everything is all roses right now. Now, again, you got to get to the regular season and see if, dividends are paid. But there's a method to what he's doing right now. So what I've watched from him here at Hallis Hall quite a bit, probably seen 4, 5, 6 practices, is I really think they're trying to master the basics right now. I think that they're trying to build the foundation and really, kind of solidify what they're trying to teach Caleb. And I think that they're more concerned right now with, let's make sure that we understand the play calls, that we're able to enunciate in the huddle, we're able to break the huddle, we're able to set motions and protections and snap the football before we get a delay of game penalty. And I think that we saw some hiccups with their processing and some of the procedural stuff early on. A lot of that stuff has gone away.
Yeah.
So, I think Ben is really stressed, hey, let's get the basics, done, so then we can put in the plays that we're going to run early in the season, and then go from there. I was told, I wasn't at Family Fest, but I was told it was a little sloppy. I think that's the word that Ben used. You could elaborate. That's a little disheartening because at this point, those are the things that I don't want to see. Like, you're going to throw picks. In fact, I want to see Caleb be more aggressive this year.
Interesting.
And I think he was 20-6 touchdown interception ratio. I'd be more than thrilled to see him 29, 30 touchdowns and 11, 12, 13 interceptions, because it tells me he's taking chances. You don't play reckless, but you do have to be aggressive. So the physical mistakes I've seen so far out there, not really bothered by, because I know there's a ton of talent there. Some of the procedural stuff early in camp did bother me, but I saw that go away. So I was a little surprised to hear that Sunday at Family Fest it was a little sloppy.
Yeah, they were talking about having a nervous energy at the stadium. There was 23,000 people there for a practice. Yeah. Bears fans are pumped, I think. And they're, I think, excited to see what happens with Caleb Williams in year 2. And you touched on a lot of things that we have sort of seen, some getting used to this scheme and its long play calls and its alerts and its kills and all these different things that he has to do pre-snap. But then every now and then you see a signature Caleb Williams. Yeah. There's 10 guys on the planet who can make that throw. But getting from under center, getting in the rhythm, is that what you're looking for? Kind of what are you looking for from Caleb as we move towards that Monday night game against the Vikings? Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, the basics are so important to me right now. And to go back a little bit, you have to think about where Caleb has come from. I'm not sure he ever played under center at any point in his football career, from Little League football to high school football to the collegiate level. Last year was probably the first time he spent any time under center. At the collegiate level, you look to the sideline, you see pictures of Kirk Herbstreit and maybe your favorite Disney character, and somehow, some way, that morphs into a play call. There's no getting in and out of the huddle. There's no calling the play. There's no setting the protection. So it really is. It's like learning a foreign language. And to think that Caleb, and again, he was the first pick of the draft. I expect a lot out of him. I'm not trying to make mistakes or make excuses for him. But he's learning now a third system in 3 years. And Ben's system is going to be, I think, a little more difficult to kind of understand and process than what he's played in recently. So I do think that this is really, really important when you get to that first game against the Vikings on that Monday night, that it's just second nature when you break that huddle and you're not thinking, you're just reacting. And I think that to me is really, the foundation of what they're trying to build here. There's no question that there is unlimited talent there under center. He has to play on time. He has to make sure he's not trying to do too much, play within the system, and just, trust that the coach has got your back and he's pointing you in the right direction. And I think that I think they'll find some common ground here before the start of the regular season.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because when you go through camp, it can be like a vortex. Like every day is the same. You never know what day it is. It's Groundhog Day. And you kind of live and die by each one of these practices. But it seems like Ben has a plan that goes 4 weeks down the line, that they're working and building on things.
Yeah, I think the analogy I used, and I don't know that it was a good one, was, look, you really can't you can't evaluate how well a house is built by looking at the exterior. So you can look at some of the other stuff. Wow, it was a beautiful pass. He scrambled. He threw it. But if it's all built on a crappy foundation, it's all going to crumble at some point. So that's why when I say I think the first 7-8 practices have been all about building this foundation where Caleb and the receivers and everyone understands the offense, and getting in and out of the huddle is something that they're really harping on. The other stuff, once you start just playing and not thinking, he's got so much skill. It'll all be good. So, I think there's a lot of pressure on him. He told us the other day on our radio show that he doesn't feel pressure, but I would think externally there's a lot of pressure out there. First quarterback taken last year. The kid in Washington played really well. You've had a coaching change. You've added some weapons. So table is set, and I think I think Caleb is ready to deliver.
And the table is set with lots of skill players.
Yeah.
And as somebody who played wideout, I'm curious, when you have a guy like Luther Burden, who seems to have all the talent, physical skill in the world, when you're a rookie playing receiver in the NFL, that's difficult. Kind of put us in his shoes and kind of what he's going through, especially being behind with the injury.
Yeah, same number, different skill set. The 87, there's no question. I played it a little differently than him. Look, I think the one thing, and one of the things, as simple as it is, I love the accountability that is on display out there. Luther had been out because of injury, and the last thing you want to do if you haven't been able to practice is make a mental mistake. And I think you remember the first practice that Luther was out there, he was not aligned properly, or he didn't go where he was supposed to go.
And he got pulled.
And that's the accountability that this team needs. Like, they cried for it last year. Collectively, we want to be coached hard. We want to be held accountable. That's the type of accountability that I think has been missing. His athletic ability is undeniable. Second practice I watched him participate in, he's built like DJ, so he's very powerful. He's not real tall, but he's thick and he's fast and he's strong. He's got a lot of wiggle inside. I think that you'll see him used a lot in the slot. I wouldn't be shocked to see him in the backfield. I have this dream that at some point you're going to see Caleb in the shotgun, or even under center, with DJ flanked on one side and Luther Burden on the other side in the backfield.
Wow.
So I got Caleb Williams as my quarterback. I got Luther Burden. I got DJ Moore in the backfield. I got Cole and Colston Loveland split out wide with Rome. And I, as a defensive coordinator, good luck with that. And I think that that's some of the stuff that excites me. Not only are there a ton of talented, skilled players like Luther Burden, they're going to be coordinated by a guy who orchestrated a top 5 offense in each of the last 3 years in Ben Johnson up in Detroit.
And there's lots of people out here who love Bears football. There's lots of Bears fans who love fantasy football. When you look at the volume of skill players, and it's possible that DJ and Rome could have 1,000 yards, and you have 2 excellent or quality receiving tight ends.
Yeah.
If you're in a fantasy draft, there's lots of guys there, and maybe there's something that fans could try is renegade fantasy football.
Yeah. First of all, they do have an embarrassment of riches here at Hallis Hall. Now, some people always say, or some people will say, how do you get the ball to everyone? Look, that's a good problem to have. It'll be fine. But renegade fantasy football is something that I've been a part of now for the last couple of weeks. It's something that my agent, Steve Mandel, who's here locally, and some of his associates put together late last year, where you actually can manage your football team, okay? So I was always the guy whose team never performed well because I was always picking guys that would get hurt, and then I had an excuse. Well, with the Renegade Fantasy Football, league, you can actually make substitutions in the middle of the game, regardless of injury.
Interesting.
You don't like matchups. Your guy's not playing well, so you can replace him. And it really kind of gives you a hands-on approach to fantasy football. I've been a novice fantasy guy like this, so this is something that I'm really excited about. I'll have a league, and people can compete with me. But to be able to actually coach your team, I think, is a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, it's something that maybe we should just get a whole marquee league going.
You should, yes, and then just, challenge me and beat the hell out of me because I'm not usually good at it.
Then I guess we're betting a lot of money. Tom Waddle, thank you so much for joining us again. Yep. Fridays during the regular season, Bair Essentials on Marquee Sports Network. Yep. Thanks for joining us on the Chicago Football Show.
And we're back for the final segment of the Chicago Football Show. Again, I'm Scott, that's Carmen, and thank you so much to Tom Waddle for stopping by. Of course, you can see him on Bair Essentials every Friday during the regular season, and you can do that by, just downloading the Watch Marquee app, easiest way to do it, and you get all kinds of fun Bear stuff as we roll through the football season. Carm, there's been so much offensive talk on this show that we cannot ignore the other side of the football, which has been pretty good to this point, especially up front. The one thing I've really noticed is Montez Sweat's kind of like on one right now. He's really getting into the backfield a lot. He's been good against the run. Ever since the pads have come on, we've seen 98 just really make his presence felt. Now, again, it's in the summer. And the Bears need that in the fall, but encouraging signs for a guy who kind of has that. He doesn't go to OTAs normally. He went to OTAs this time. And Ben Johnson said he was really disappointed in how last year went. And for Montez Sweat to be their highest paid player, they need him to show up.
They do, and I don't think it's entirely up to Montez Sweat to make sure that happens. Like, he needs to be put in advantageous situations. One thing about the Matt Eberflus defense last year, he didn't blitz a whole lot, and he wanted those front four guys were those front four guys. There wasn't a whole lot of variance when it came to the looks that they were presenting. Matty Bruce's defense was based on the front four guys on your defense just overpowering the guys on the other side of the line of scrimmage. That clearly didn't always work out. That is also not Dennis Allen's scheme. Dennis Allen does like, size and length when it comes to the players that he ideally wants along his defensive front, but he also presents multiple different looks. He uses the entire front seven and even some of the secondary at times when it comes to pressure packages and blitzes. And I think also what we've seen this camp, not only does Montez Sweat look a little more comfortable, he's being put in better situations, I think, by Dennis Allen, but you look at the guy next to him and you look at Javon Dexter. And what was one of the first things we said, Scott, as camp got underway? We're like, is that 99? Like, is that Javon Dexter 99? Like, he's was huge. He's put on weight, and it looks like good weight. I mean, I don't know for sure. I haven't done his body composition, but he does look bigger and he looks stronger. And you have to think that with the experience that he's now added in the league, that's helping as well. And those interior guys, that interior rotation, which they added to with Grady Jarrett, and then they put Dio Dangbo on the other side of Montez Sweat. All of those things work in conjunction with each other to make it easier on everybody so that you can isolate one-on-one matchups for your marquee pass rusher like Montez Sweat, because the offensive line has to worry about the other three guys up front, or four guys, or five guys if you're bringing a six-man pressure. There are things that you have to account for if you're the offense going against this defense now outside of Montez Sweat. And that's, I think, going to be the biggest help to Montez, is now he is going to be put in some more favorable matchups and some more favorable situations where he doesn't have to be the one to necessarily carry the load. And by freeing him up in that way, I would expect more production from him, in fact. So I'm excited to see what that looks like, again, against another team. So when the Dolphins come in, or the Bills, and then once the season really gets going and everybody's really comfortable in this defense, this very aggressive defense, I think that's going to spell a lot more production for Montez Sweat this year.
Yeah, and I have a lot of confidence in what Dexter is going to be able to do, and Andrew Billings also in that nose tackle spot. Yeah. Grady Jarrett, I've been around that dude for a long time. He gets it. He's going to produce. Dio Odangbo is kind of that X factor wild card for me, because I think the Bears are going to pay him $16 million per for the next 3 years. and they kind of made a futures bet, right? Because if you look at his numbers, they're not astronomical. Now he's getting paid kind of according to his slot. Like you look at what TJ Watt is getting, what Myles Garrett got, like those are massive numbers, and Dio is considerably less than that. And he had 8 sacks 2 years ago, but last year he only had 3, his first year as a full-time starter. But if you look deeper into his pressure numbers, he was very high in terms of ranking in terms of quarterback pressure percentage. He had 25 hurries and I think 12 quarterback hits. So he was getting around the quarterback. He was creating pressure. He just wasn't getting home enough. And I think that if he can kind of correct that a little bit, that's going to make them truly dynamic, because Odangbo, he's a big, tough dude. I think he's going to line up over the left tackle quite a bit. But if he can kind of set that edge and be a threat on the other side, that goes back to what you were saying about Montez, is that, all right, like who are you going to chip, right? Who are you going to scheme against? Where is your tight end going to go to try to negate one of those guys? I think it becomes a lot harder. So I think that this line has done pretty well against the offensive line of the Bears to this point. And it's going to be really interesting. Again, I cannot wait for when you're up here and you and I are watching this joint practice with the Dolphins. I think it's really cool too that after that there's another joint practice that we're also going to have a Chicago football show, special shows for both joint practices, and we can gauge the Bears' progress throughout. So please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or watch us on YouTube, watch us on Marquee Sports Network, or the Watch Marquee app. I mean, we're global. Okay, we're everywhere. And I'm being told to wrap this up, so we are going to end this Tuesday one, but we are going to be back with you just a couple days away on Friday from Hallis Hall. For Carmen, I'm Scott. Thank you so much for joining us on this fun, action-packed episode. We'll talk to you again real soon.